Hey, I'm Otto Kjellberg. When I think back on my life, I am shocked at all that happened. I will tell you a few stories. I was born on November 27, 1862 on Malmön Island, on the west coast of Sweden. My father was Johan Andersson and my mother was Maja Britter Svensdotter. Before I go on, lots of people have asked about my Swedish name. All of a man's sons take a last name based on their father's first name. However, for many years our whole family appeared under an umbrella name in the Swedish record books. It was Kjellberg and was almost as common as Smith. When I came to America, I used Kjellberg as my last name, and then changed it so English-speaking people could say it. My mother died when I was 1 month old, and then when I was 6 months old my father and brother died at sea. They were fishermen. Dad was 41 years old and my brother was 9 years old. The red arrow shows where I was born. This stone monument says at the top, "In memory of the fishermen who have died at sea." The yellow arrow points to my dad and brother. For a small fishing village, those are a lot of names. Of course, I was now an orphan. In those days orphans were auctioned off to the family who could take the child and could show that it would be the least burdensome on the family. That amounted to the lowest bidder winning the auction. Back to this map of the island. The family that took me in were the Olsons and they were stone cutters at the other end of the island. As you can see on the map at the yellow arrow. This is where I lived, although it looks like it has been modernized. This house was right next to the stone quarry. Stone cutting was hard work. In those days many of the streets of the cities were paved with the small blocks of granite which we cut by hand. I did not want to spend the rest of my life cutting stone blocks. So I decided to go to America. A lot of people were going there because of the opportunities. There were companies that would act as agents and set up a travel plan for you. I had saved some money so I bought the necessary tickets. On April 20 in 1883 I boarded the ship, SS Orlando, shown here. I was 19 years old and alone. It went from Göteborg to a city called Hull, in England. We then boarded a train that went straight across England to Liverpool. At Liverpool we boarded a larger and nicer ship, called the British Princess, and it eventually took us to Philadelphia in America. It seemed like we would never get there. It was such an amazing feeling just to finally be standing on America. I suppose we looked like those in this picture. Everything was different and nobody spoke Swedish. The end of my travels was to a place called St. Paul, Minnesota, and the first thing to do was find work. I worked at many jobs and within a year I had a surprise. My best friend Carolina Elizabeth Johansdotter. See how confusing those names can be. She was no relation to me but her father's name was Johan. She arrived in St. Paul. She had lived in the fishing village where I was born. It was wonderful to see her and we was able to get better acquainted and spend time together. Well, you guessed it. The next year we got married. It was August 27 in 1885. It was wonderful to have a friend and companion. Soon we moved to Chicago where work was more plentiful. We had our first baby, Blanche Mignonette, the next year 1886. Then Alfred Sidney in 87. And Arthur Carl in 89. Followed by Florence Alice in 91. And next was Benjamin in 94. Then Ruth and was born in 96. And lastly Alice in 1900, but she died at birth. We moved to Chicago before Florence was born in 1891. Shortly after arriving in Chicago, I lost my job and had trouble getting another. I got depressed and got drunk. I sat down on a curb knowing I should not go home like I was. As I sat there, 3 young women walked by and they were singing a beautiful hymn. I decided to follow them and see where they were going. They went into a small store where a lot of other people were. I eventually went in too, and a man was preaching a beautiful gospel. I then and there realized that what was missing in my life was Jesus Christ, and I accepted him right then. I soon linked myself onto that little company of Christians and stayed there for many years. By the way, that picture is of the Heligar, Schrift, the Swedish Bible. A lot of things happened in Chicago. In 1906 I became a citizen of the United States. We were living in the suburb called Berwyn, at the time. I admit I eventually lost my Christian spark, and my brother John Edward convinced Caroline and I called her Betsy, to move to Texas where he was living. So, we moved to Corpus Christi. This is a picture taken in front of our house on August 27 in 1940. It was our 55th anniversary. It was our last big celebration because Betsy died 5 months later. I miss her so much. On my last visit to Chicago, which was about 1942, we took this picture. All 4 generations of Kjellbergs. I am holding great-grandson William Sidney. Of course, you know my son Sid and his son William Henry, and he is holding my other great-grandson Thomas Ebner. I hope this has not been too long for you, but it has taken me just about 80 years to live it. I must say goodbye now, and may God bless you.